OMG, here we go with episode 92 on the Airhug Community Podcast. Hello there and welcome or welcome back. If you are new here, this is the Airhug Community Podcast and I am your host, Judy Arizosa. I am a midlife lady who is someone who loves to share stories from myself and special guests that reflect on just how midlife really goes, not how we think it should go. We talk about the good, the bad, the messy, the ugly, the wonderful, all the emotions. And this is a place where we actually can grow from our experiences. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. Hi there. I am so excited to be here. I have to tell you guys, it's just me today, no guest, but I'm super excited to share this. This is a topic I have talked about in the past. I have probably written about it on my blog in past years, but I think it's super important, and it's kind of the part 2 to episode 88 when we talked about not wanting to be active couch potatoes. So I kind of left you hanging in that episode, right? We talked about being active and exercising and then sitting the rest of the day being the definition of being an active couch potato, but I didn't really give you any strategies to talk about how not to be that way. And I think in the life that we live, especially if you live a suburban life, it's very easy to go ahead and, be very consistent at your exercise habit, and bravo you, keep it up, don't stop. But then, it can be hard to keep moving the rest of the day. And so we're going to talk about that today. And there's a term for that. It's called non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And that's just a fancy way for saying energy we burn from doing things other than exercise. Basically, energy burned from the activities of daily living, period. But we can also use the acronym NEAT, N-E-A-T, which is probably how we're going to refer to it for the rest of this episode because it's so much easier. But this term was first coined by Dr. James Levine of the Mayo Clinic. And he realized that we all know this, when we're not exercising, we are still burning energy. But what he pointed out for the rest of us was that this can actually be a very significant source of energy burning, especially for those of us who are trying to stay active, especially as we get into middle life and we find it harder and harder to maintain a lean figure without losing muscle mass, right? And that is really the name of the game, is to retain a strong, lean figure. And of course, aesthetics are great, but we also want to be very functional in our life and not have any limitations placed on it. And so, as you know, a body in motion tends to stay in motion, or an object in motion tends to stay in motion. So today we're going to talk about staying in motion. So I've got a couple of stats for you, and this is kind of interesting. So according to one study, lean people actually sat for 2.5 less hours per day than their non-lean counterparts. And so we all know there are ways to get moving, but we don't always want to do it. And I'm looking out the window today at a very gray, dark, and dreary day. And I've already set my timer twice to remind myself to get up and moving. And actually, as I'm recording this podcast and every podcast that I record, I make it a rule that I have to do it standing up. So why is standing up so important? Well, you're a lot more active. You're burning more calories standing up than you are sitting in a chair relaxing. Of course we know that, right? That's obvious. So, can you use NEAT to actually help yourself get leaner? The short answer is yes. Here's a great example. Speaking of standing, a 145-pound person will burn 102, roughly, these are all estimates, and calories are always estimates, but will burn roughly 102 calories per hour at an office job seated. If they were to perform their job standing, they would burn 174 calories per hour. Don't think that's very big? Well, think about compounding interest, like your savings account. That adds up to, are you ready? About 18,000 calories per year. And roughly that's a 5-pound weight loss. It's also the equivalent of doing a 30-minute runs at 5 miles per hour to get the same calorie burn over the course of a year. So NEAT is no joke, right? So we know that exercise alone doesn't cut it. That was the entire topic of episode 88. And of course, in episode 91, we talked about reasons why we do need to be consistent with exercise. Today, we're going to focus on the other 23 hours of a day when we're not exercising. So what can we do? How can we get started with making our non-exercise time active? Well, I'm going to go through 5 little tips. And then after that, not really tips, 5 thoughts, maybe mindset shifts. And then after that, we're going to go through 10 specific tips that you can use. So this is going to be a great episode for you to maybe listen to more than once. You may want to actually, if you're listening to it while you're commuting now or on your walk, especially if you're on your walk, go you, but you may want to listen to it again and take those notes. So let's get into this. All right, first mindset is awareness. Become aware of just how you spend your non-exercise hours in the day. So take note of your inactive time. It may surprise you. So I use my Aura ring, and this is not an ad for Aura, but actually it's my favorite feature. I used to think the sleep was my favorite feature, and that's great too. But my favorite feature on the Aura ring is it tells me how many hours and minutes in the previous day that I was inactive. And I'm always trying to keep that in a zone of, not their red zone. They have like a red zone, which is kind of like their danger zone. But for me, I'm always trying to keep that to a minimum for me. So just being aware of it is really, really helpful. You may even want to just take a look at your day and write it out. It's up to you. If that's too much work, just become aware of it and think about that. Think about times in the day when you actually can get up and be more active. So number 2, figure out, this is leading to this, right? Figure out, now you know when you have those sedentary times, figure out when you can accomplish some things that'll actually keep you moving instead of just sitting there. I know I'm not really big on multitasking, but in a way I am. So what we're talking about is there something that you're doing during the day that you could be doing on your feet instead of seated in a chair? All right, now challenge yourself, number 3, to try just one method to move more during the day. See if it resonates with you. In fact, number 4 is to rate your experience, and maybe in number 3, you're going to try one method today. Maybe over the course of a week or 2 or 3 weeks or a month, you'll try several different methods. And I'm going to give you some methods, right? 10 of them in a little bit. After you've tried a few of them, rate your experience and only keep the ones that you know you'll actually do. All right? And think about this. If you're burning an extra, this is just another little mindset thing for you to be aware of. Number 5, if you're burning an extra 100 calories a day, that's going to lead to about 10.5 pounds per year. Or if you're burning roughly 200 calories more a day, about 21 pounds per year. So these little mindset or awareness shifts, I'm going to go over them really quick. Ready? Number 1 was be aware of your inactive time. Okay. Number 2, figure out when you can take some of that inactive time and become inactive. Number 3, challenge yourself to try just one at a time. Number 4, after you've tried a few, rate your experiences and see how that felt. And then number 5, keep in mind that you can lose maybe 10 to 20 pounds a year if you're consistent with this. Okay, so now let's get into the fun part. These are my 10 tips for adding in NEAT into your day. You can try one of them, you can try 3, 5, 7, 10, but here's a great reference list. All right, number 1, stand more. So as I already told you, I always record my podcasts standing up instead of sitting down. And here's another thing. Whenever I have a coaching call with a client, I always do it standing up. And you know what? The first reason I do that, and I was taught this by one of my coaches years ago, one of my business coaches, was that when you stand up, you actually portray more energy to who you're talking to, and they're going to pick up on your enthusiasm. So I hope that you guys are picking up on my enthusiasm, because I'm standing up and I am really excited about these 10 tips. So that's number 1. Number 2, if you own a car, wash your own car. This is something my husband loves to do. I only like to do it. I will tell you that when I had little kids at home and we were looking for something to do that wasn't like watching TV all the time, is we would put the car in the front lawn, because they would get a hoot out of that, and we would wash the car on the front lawn. So the other perk was that the lawn got watered, but we all got active. I was always trying to get my kids tired so they would sleep good at night. So I didn't really know that was neat, but that's what it was. Number 3, speaking of kids, or if you have grandkids and you go to their sporting events, don't sit in the chair. Stand up on the sidelines, and maybe you're at a soccer game. Run up and down with them and just move about. But even just standing, I used to stand at my kids' hockey games by the glass quite a bit instead of sitting. Not all the time, but a lot of the time I would stand. Number 1, I could see better sometimes, but it just kept me active and engaged. And it was, for one thing, those hockey rinks were so darn cold, and I found that if I stood up and moved around a little bit, I would stay warmer than sitting on that cold bench that was made of cold metal. Ouchie. I don't even want to remember those days. All right. That was number 3. Number 4, carry your groceries to your car, or you can take it one step further. Go to your public market where you actually have to carry your groceries the whole time and then back to your car. The public market experience is great. And here where we are in Rochester, New York, we have the most amazing public market. And here's a little tip, definitely off topic, but it was rated the number 1 public market in the entire country, even better than Seattle. So go there, Seattle. We got you covered over here. All right, number 5, use the bathroom on a different floor, whether you work at home or in a workplace. I'm sure there's bathrooms on more than one floor. When you need a bathroom break, go to the farthest bathroom away from where you're currently working. Number 6, I already mentioned this. When you're on a phone call, pace. Okay, this is so funny. During COVID, our daughter and son-in-law were staying with us for like 3 months, and everybody was working. And we would take turns actually watching our only granddaughter at the time. But what I noticed about my son-in-law was that when he was on work calls, he was constantly moving. And sometimes he would even have the baby on his shoulders, or maybe I would have the baby, but he never took a phone call ever that I saw him sitting down. He was constantly moving. And we laughed about it. But I'll tell you what, he is not a heavy guy at all. He's about as lean can be. All right, number 7, go on a walk with your favorite podcast or ebook. And instead of sitting there while you're listening, get out and walk during it. I actually really enjoy listening to podcasts and audiobooks when I walk. All right, number 8, wash your own dishes. Yep, because that's more stand-up time. I know, you're probably going to be like, what? But honestly, how long is it going to take you to wash dishes? 10 minutes? Great, that's 10 minutes of active time during the day that you didn't have before, right? All right, where is number 9? Oh, don't want to go for a walk or move around? I don't care whether you're in the house or out. Set your timer for 5 minutes. Walk out in one direction and then turn around and come back. Sometimes I will do that. I'll take the dogs on a short walk. And if it's a cold, rainy, windy day and I really don't want to get out, I'm like, all right, come on. Dress for the weather, set the timer for 5 minutes, turn around and come back. Almost all the time we go a little bit farther. But there are some days when the weather's really nasty that we don't. So number 10, this is probably my favorite tip, and I do use this a lot. I know women love to get together with girlfriends, and girlfriend time is so important. Friend time is definitely important. And I love husband time too, and I do this with my husband as well. Go on walking dates. But it is my number one thing to do when someone says, "Hey, do you want to get together?" And they'll be like, "Do you want to go to lunch or have a cup of coffee?" And I always say, "Could we meet for a walking date?" And whether someone has 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 45 minutes, the time just flies. I just walked with a cousin last week who I hadn't seen since before COVID. And we got over on the canal here. So in Rochester, we have the Erie Canal. And before we knew it, we had walked out 2.5 miles and then we had to walk back. So we got in a 5 mile walk that day. And can I just tell you, we didn't even notice. So this is so funny. The, the one thing, and you guys in midlife are going to totally get this, women. When I know I'm going to be on a walking date, I have to plan my water, right? Because if you're drinking a gallon of water a day, you don't want to drink a significant amount before your walking date. Otherwise, you better make sure your walking location has bathrooms. But I just found the greatest park with a friend here the other day that actually had open bathrooms and we could do loops around it and get to the bathroom like every 20 minutes or so. So bravo. All right, but those are my 10 tips for using NEAT to actually help maintain your lean and strong physique. And so I hope they resonated with you. You don't have to do all of them. You can pick one or two, but this works, and this is something I live by. I actually do all of these things. Okay, I don't wash my car very often anymore, I'll be honest. But there are a lot of times where I will just wash the dishes. Recently, we just actually lost our cleaning lady, so we're doing a lot of our own cleaning here, and that's okay. I'm great with that. I just think of it as more time doing NEAT, right? So anyways, thank you so much for tuning in today. This was as short could be, but also as concise as can be. And I think you will find these tips to be very, very helpful overall. I mean, give it a year and see what happens. You know what? If you were to encompass, burning that extra 100 to 200 calories per day, exercise the same amount and ate the same amount, I would love to know what happens in a year. Are you leaner than what you were? I'm willing to bet that you are. So take that for what it's worth. To me, it's worth a lot, and that's why I chose to share it with you here today. Hey, I'd love to ask you a favor if you're up for it. Listen, the way that podcasts get found is by having great ratings and subscription. So if you would do me a favor, if you're on Spotify or Apple, please subscribe to this podcast and leave a 5-star review. It actually helps get the word out. It makes us more searchable so that other people who are looking for just, an accomplice to get through midlife, right? They can find us and they can hop on and reap the benefits just like you're doing. So I want to thank you for doing that in advance, because I super, super appreciate it. You're not going to win a prize or anything. You're just going to have done a great deed.